Hi guys, welcome to this video and welcome to the Flight Factor 767-300ER for X-Plane 10. It was released about 2-3 months ago now. I've already done one video of a series of 3, the first video being about the exterior modelling and some of the animations. This video is reviewing the inside of the aircraft, and then the third and final one is going to be looking at some of the operating aspects and the flight dynamics and handling of the thing. So I'll leave a link to the first video in the description, and then when the third video is up I'll leave a link for the third video as well. Now before we go any further, I'm just going to mention a couple of things. The first thing is this really useful, I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a really odd thing where they have the airport tannoy audible whilst you're in the cockpit. Now even in real life you can't hear an airport tannoy in the cockpit of an aircraft. So I really don't know what's going on with that, but what we can do is, just for the moment, we'll turn the volume down, and that gets rid of that. So now we've got no aircraft volume, but we'll turn it up as and when we need it. Next things I'm going to point out, we are at Manchester in the UK, which is Aerosoft scenery, and personally I think it's been very nicely done. Now one of the things that I think X-Plane 10 suffers with a little bit is a lack of good quality payware scenery, and this is really quite nice. One of the things I hate is when you turn up at an airfield and there's no other aircraft around, looking a bit sort of derelict and unloved. But this is a very nice piece of scenery. I like using this airfield, and I like it with the scenery that Aerosoft have put together for it. Because it's one of the things with X-Plane 10 is it does have that sensation of a lack of payware, good quality payware scenery. Of course it's made up for by the fact that there's such a high quantity of really good free scenery available on various websites and forums, but fundamentally it is one of the elements that X-Plane does suffer from slightly. The other element it suffers from slightly is down here, the flight management computers. There aren't that many tube liners in X-Plane 10 that have a decent FMC at all. You know, in my opinion, there's not that many that are really worth a great deal. Now, of course, it depends what you want to do with your aircraft. Some people will be very devoted to the idea of mimicking an airline operation, at which point the FMC is critical. Others will literally just want the fun of flying from A to B, at which point the FMC is less critical. But fundamentally, one of the elements is that X-Plane has not currently got the same level of detail involved in FMCs as the likes of PMDG have achieved. So it's one of the elements we will touch on during these videos is the FMC, because fundamentally a tube liner relies on the FMC. So with that in mind, we'll have a look at it and see in terms of its level of detailing whether it errs more towards the sort of high fidelity side, or whether it errs more towards the high fun side, shall we say, the sort of gamey side as opposed to the simmy side. So we'll have a quick look at that during it. Now, a couple of things I'm going to highlight at this point. The first thing is I do have the frame rate counter up here so that you guys can see what sort of frame rates I'm getting. I'll put in the description for the video, I'll put my system specs. I am, however, not a technical guru, so please don't ask me what can be achieved with this piece of hardware, or what's better, this piece of hardware or that piece of hardware. I don't know. I just put this together myself, trying with my best abilities, and that up there is the result. Of course, that up there as the result is also dependent on this here, so I'll show you my rendering settings for my graphics. There's no rocket science here, guys. Personally, as far as performance is concerned, the biggest thing once you've got your hardware set up for performance is the settings you sit and put in here, and a lot of it is trial and error. So for example, I like the shadow details quite high, but that does mean I've backed off things like water reflection detail, world detail distance, and so on and so forth. Likewise, the clouds in X-Plane 10 for me aren't particularly great. No, I don't have a cloud add-on as of yet, textures wise, etc. However, the cloud detail's not particularly great. I don't mind whacking it down to 35%. It still seems to be adequate for my needs. Likewise, I do like HDR rendering. But the trick, guys, is to just change one thing at a time and keep going back in and out of the aircraft and the sim. My advice to you is find your worst performing aircraft for frames per second and smoothness, because it's not just that number in the top left corner you're interested in, it's the fact that it's smooth as well, with no major stutters or lag in the system. Find your worst performing aircraft in terms of the frame rate and the smoothness. Find your worst performing piece of scenery, adjust these until you get a balance that you like, and then when you then use a less demanding aircraft or scenery, all should be good. That's my advice for how to go about it, but beyond that, my experience is somewhat limited in terms of the technological fields that are out there. So I'm quickly going to jump outside now. The main reason being is in the previous video a couple of people made comments to ask if I could show some more of the liveries off. This is the Star Alliance Lufthansa livery. There are 7 with the main download, the main package that you buy. There are other packages that you can buy in terms of just pure livery packages, but this is the Star Alliance Lufthansa one, and I think it's a very smart, very attractive livery. And I think it's just it's one of those things where X-Plane 10 now seems to have some really, really good 3D external models around for a lot of the current releases that are coming out. And if you compare them to releases from 2-3 years ago, there's a vast difference in terms of the quality and the development of this, but very nice livery. So let's just pop back inside. Now, in terms of looking at the aircraft, what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the textures, the 3D modelling, and some of the sort of lighting, etc. that goes on in amongst it. Before we do that, what we're going to do is we're just going to have a look into the cockpit, not the cockpit, we're in the cockpit, we're going to have a look into the cabin. There are a few nice touches, so you can see that we can't open the door unless we unlock it with a switch over here. So now we can unlock the door and go into the cabin. Please excuse the fact that I don't know the keys to speed this up, and you know, it's just a painfully slow process walking through the cabin, slower than you would actually even walk. Now, I'm not particularly fussed about interior modelling of cabins, because I spend 99.9% of my time in the small room at the front. In the office, however, I know that for some people the immersion factor of cabins is a significant part of their enjoyment. However, there's not a lot of animation going on in here, guys. The bins, overhead luggage bins, can't be opened. The lighting, none of the lighting works at all. There's no blinds to operate manually, and you know, a lot of the doors, so the cupboard over there doesn't work. Curtains don't move. There's no real functionality. I think it's here just more for the eye candy than anything else. You know, the catering doesn't do anything. The lavatory doesn't open. The only thing that opens and closes is this door here, which is the exterior door, and you can't even do that with the handles, which are over here. You'll see these animate when I do the following. Up here to the plugins menu, 757, 767. Let's just go here, get it out of the way of the handles and the door. Airplane, open all doors, and you'll see it's nicely animated and the handle's nicely animated, but unfortunately there's nothing in the cabin that you can do anything with. So let's just pop back to the front. Now, you had a brief glimpse of one of the things that I really do like, and that is this bit down here. And there is another thing I really do like in terms of tutorials. And what am I on about with regards to that? Well, if you go up here, I don't like little plug-in lists like this. I find they're very fiddly and very finicky, and there's a good chance and good probability that you're going to click the wrong thing. But you'll notice the first few options, all bar the last one, are exactly the same as here. So in effect, what happens is if I go to airplane, you see it jumps to airplane, and I can go through all these. And I went through some of them in terms of the first video for things like the ground and the exterior modelling, which is all very good. What we will do whilst we're here is we'll put the ground power unit in. Couple of things to be aware of whilst we are here. I will mention them whilst we're on this page. You'll see there's a maintenance here. You will need to use maintenance because it does simulate things like dropping hydraulic fluid levels, and if you don't, what will happen is over a matter of time you'll end up with warnings and captions and systems that aren't working properly. And it does have persistent failure modelling in it to a certain degree. If you break it, it comes up in the failures menu here, and it will tell you all the malfunctions that are detected, and you will then have to go into maintenance, and you can only do maintenance if you're on the ground, cold and dark, with the engines off, etc. However, for the cockpit, one of the areas where there's a good element of this that's important is in this menu here and this menu here. So this menu here, you get the option for, if you like, this is your preferences, so you can have mouse wheel support if you want it or not. I know for some people that's more significant than others. For me, for example, I find it slightly irksome that because you've got the mouse wheel is using, you can see it there, look, because the mouse wheel is used for the zoom. If you inadvertently zoom to the point where you then come across a switch, the chances are all you're going to do is turn the switch, and if it's something up here in a critical phase of flight, you could cause yourself a little bit of grief. So the option is there to turn it off. In terms of other things, charts, you can pin charts to your yokes if you want. It's kind of a 3-position switch, so charts are on, charts are magnified, charts go away. Just like that. The only thing for me is I believe you can change the charts to something that you load up as a PDF, but the reality for me is that I tend to use Navigraph alongside this, and as a result of that, the Navigraph charts are far easier to use than messing around with that setup. Hide yokes. You can hide the yokes. I tend to have the yokes hidden just so that I can see the instrument panels better. However, when they're not hidden, they are animated, as you can see. In terms of the avionics, the 767 over the years had a massive number of different avionics fits, and you can see here that these are some of the options that were available in real life. Now if it's greyed out at the moment, it's not currently active. If it's white, you can change it. Now in the first release of this, you couldn't change this. Now the FMC, there were 3 versions of the FMC fitted to the 767. There was the non-PIP, which is the original. Then along came the PIP, which was an improved package for it, and then eventually they got the Pegasus. And the Pegasus, if you like, was the most up-to-date version of it. But fundamentally, this Honeywell FMS, or FMC, I should say, went through 3 generations, is the best way of describing it. And we've got 2 modelled here, so which is nice. Enhanced ground proximity warning system is available. You can turn it on and off. And there's a few other things like trend vectors, integrated QFDs. The integrated QFD, by the way, you'll probably be familiar with the 2 crossed bars that move around independently for your flight director. The integrated Q is the one that looks like a chevron, and you just fly to that chevron. But you can see the sheer number of options that are available to tailor the systems. And obviously if you know the systems that were pertinent to a particular airline, you can even then go as far as not just to have the right livery, but you could even have the right instrument fit, which is, in some respects that's very nice. Now, what we will do whilst in fact we won't do that yet, what we are going to do is go up here, plugins. This is the only one that's not on that list, and it's frustrating why it's not on the tablety thing. The tablety thing, by the way, is you can click on it down there. It's got a click spot. I really do like it. I just wish there's one thing that they had considered putting on it. Plugins, that checklist. The checklist isn't linked into that, and I don't know why, because it's just another menu option. Now the checklist, it's basically automated in as much as it will follow through every time you do something. So if I go up here and turn the battery on, you can see it goes green, indicates it's on, and then the aircraft starts to fire up. One of the things I really don't like with X-Plane is the Flight Factor X-Plane stuff, by the way, is these flippy covers. They're a real pain. I really don't like them. So checklist reset. Now one of the things it does have is it has a tutorial, and there's a really nice effect to the tutorial. So please make sure you start in cold and dark, otherwise the tutorial is null and void. Same checklist process, but what it does is it puts a red circle around the switch you need to operate. If you were to just jump in and go through the amplified without being familiar with the cockpit, some of these switches you will take a long time trying to find them. So it's really nice that you can go through this, and then you do that, and you can see the red circle moves, and then you do that, and the red circle moves, and so on and so forth. So really like it. It's very good. If you want to close it, just go into the normal procedure power up menu, and you can get rid of it like that. So whilst we're doing that, what we will do is we'll turn a couple of these things on. And you can see that the switches depress nicely, and they all do the good thing that they should be doing. So anyway, What we're going to do now is going to have a look at some of the textures and the 3D modelling within the cockpit. So, texture-wise, textures for me are all about atmosphere. Strange effect with the light there. I wonder what's going on there. Never mind. Textures are all about atmosphere and things like worn textures, wearing around the edge of surfaces where you would expect it to be worn, dirt where you would expect there to be dirt, and so on and so forth, all add character to an aircraft. And one of the key things for me is character. There's a nice sort of this leatherette type material, really nice. And again, there's a leatherette material here, but because of the changing light, you can't actually see it at the moment. You just have to take my word that maybe later on when I mess around with the daylight, nighttime settings, we will see it. However, there's also wear and tear here. You can see the finger marks where there's been slight abrasion of or slight rubbing of the fingertips against the dials and the knobs here. And, you know, overall the textures are really, really nice. It has to be said. You can see possibly vague pale reflections in the windows and some of the textures here where it's given the effect of glazing. And I'll be honest, overall I think the textures are superb in this. I really do. The sort of wear and tear, that atmospheric appearance to the aircraft. Let's keep ourselves safe and secure. Don't want any intruders. But the wear and tear, the sheepskin effect on the seats, I think is actually quite impressive. To try and get a 3D appearance out of a 2D texture, I think is really quite impressive. I like that. But nonetheless, oh, didn't even realise the tablet's over there as well. But nonetheless, the key thing here is that the textures for me absolutely nail it. Now, I will point out at this point that I have the 757 and it just never really grabbed me. I don't know why. I just never got to grips with it. It just, for some reason, it didn't grab me as an aircraft. Now, the element of it is that the 767 is predominantly or primarily the same. But since I've been using it, I've grown to, shall we say, enjoy it a bit more. They do say that pilots are either Airbus or Boeing, and predominantly I was Airbus and turboprop before, but I'm starting to enjoy this aircraft, and one of the reasons I enjoy this aircraft is because of the wide range of destinations. So, for example, British Airways use it on high-density, fairly short-haul routes, but other times they use it for long haul. So I went over to America in a BA 767, and whilst it was quite an aged aircraft and you could tell it was aged, it was still a nice trip nonetheless. But yeah, the joy of this in many respects is the variety of destinations that you can look at in terms of operating it as per real world flight plans. So it's safe to say the textures overall are very good, and they've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort looking at the textures as a whole. Now, the next thing really to consider is the 3D modelling, I suppose is the best way of describing it, and it's very, very good. I will grant them that. It's very, very good indeed. The 3D environment has been modelled from virtually every angle, so you can go virtually anywhere. And there is something to see in terms of 3D modelling. Very, very good indeed. Quite obviously they've spent a lot of time looking at this, looking at the real thing, looking at the panel lines, the gaps where there needs to be a 3D element, where it needs to have the shape and the form, and you see the 3D handle here sticking out, and you know, there's a lot gone into this in terms of effort, and you can see the appearance. There's a lot of depth given into a lot of things. And it's quite apparent the amount of effort that's gone into this. And even here, this sort of it's not an engineer's panel, but this auxiliary panel is probably the best way of describing it down here. You can see that even this is modelled, and even the controls in this are modelled look as well. I've never even used any of these, so I don't know how they work or what you do with them. But yeah, very good. One of the things I like is the 3D fuse panel here. So if I just come over here, and you can see the 3D effect of it, because all too often what we see is a panel that's not really used and not really implemented in an add-on aircraft. You know, the developer's going to go, oh well, you know, let's just give it some sort of appearance or some sort of vague likeness or rendition. And with this, they've actually gone to the trouble of modelling the fuse board, or I should say the circuit breakers, in full 3D. Now they're not functioning, which is a shame. You know, if you've been messing around with the Majestic Dash 8 Q400, you will, by comparison, have been spoilt with their fuse board, with their circuit breaker panel. I keep saying fuse board, but these are not fuses, these are circuit breakers. The difference, by the way, is a fuse can't be reset. Historically it's a little tiny filament of a wire that burns once the current gets too high for it. Circuit breakers can be reset, although there are limitations as to how many times you can reset it, and you should never hold them in, because if it won't set, it's because there's a problem elsewhere. However, back to our 3D modelling. Look at that, for the depth and relief that we have there. Very, very nice indeed. And you can see that all of the controls have been modelled nicely. Other simple things, you can see that panel there. It's pretty much one of those things where you can go pretty much anywhere and you can pretty much see every sort of nook and cranny. So I love the fact that you've got this kind of 3D mix match of panels. Really nice, very good attention paid to it, and you know, it's just been done very nicely. So switches are 3D in terms of their animation for most of them. The only ones I've found which aren't 3D animated are FMC or so the CDU ones, which do move ever so slightly in real life, but they're not animated here. But you can see the switches animate in 3D, which is all very nice. The digits are very good. If you get very close up look in terms of textures, you don't tend to lose that much in the way of quality. My bigger bugbear with a lot of aircraft is at one extreme you can have a lot of these where you zoom in, and there we go, there's the issue I have with the zoomy buggy thing. You can zoom in and sometimes you'll lose the clarity, and then you zoom out and you lose the clarity with different, you know, sort of modellings. These, they seem to retain their clarity from a long way in to a long way out, which is really good. I mean, to be fair, at that point I can still just about read that it's the left pumps and the fuel crossfeed and whatnot. So lights, it seems to be much better, but it pretty much does exactly what it says on the tin. So I can't really have any complaints about that. Click spots are available to bring up certain instruments. So the FMC, for example, you can bring that up. I don't think you can click on any others. What I would add at this point is the two FMCs are separate. Right, I'm just going to express this or explain this. These quite commonly get referred to as FMCs or FMSs. They're not FMCs or FMSs. These are the CDUs. They are the controller display units. These are the interface between the pilot and the system. Generally, an aircraft will have one flight management computer, and the flight management computer is hidden somewhere in the electrical innards of the aircraft and is basically the computer that has all the databases, the programming, and holds all the information. In addition, you then have a various series of interfaces between that and a number of instruments. So, for example, the EFIS, the Autopilot systems, and all that goes into one thing. And the whole thing, the CDUs, the systems, and the FMC are all called the FMS, the Flight Management System. So in effect, you've got a computer which is the FMC, which is part of the FMS, the whole system, and another part of that whole system, the FMS, is the CDU. So it's quite common that people will refer to these as FMSs or FMCs. These technically are the CDUs. They're your window into the FMC. However, we've got one FMC, we've got two CDUs, and they are independent of each other. So you can see that it is nice with its pop-out windows for that. I always like that because sometimes it's a bit of a pain to be going down here and going, oh, I need to zoom in and look at this, and then you've got to go back out and look. So in terms of pop-outs, it's nice that you do have that pop-out there. But as they say in their sales blurb, there's a lot of work gone into things like the FMC and the FMS in terms of trying to get as high fidelity as they can. However, it's in the process of aligning. Generally speaking, the 3D element of the cockpit is very, very good. And you can turn all of these and mess around with all of these, and you've got your emergency lights, and various lights go out as you go. Excuse the phone. These, by the way, if you're in the aircraft flying around, do not mess around with these, because the generator drive disconnects are basically only something you can reset on the ground. So if you then go and press that and you're not on the ground, you won't be able to reset it, so you'll lose your generator off that engine for the remainder of the flight. So just, you know, one to bear in mind. The actual animation of the knobs and the controls is very good for the 3D modelling. I'll go down here a bit. You can see down here we've got good relief down here as well with the panels. Do like that, but you can see that the knobs are fully animated there, all over the place. And what's also quite impressive, in fact I'll go up here, I shall show you with this one of the light switches. Which switch is it? Right, here we go. These lights here are controlled by this knob here, and look at just the level of detail you can get in terms of how faint you can make these and the amount of adjustment that's available with these things. Very impressive. I'm impressed with that. It's not a feature that screams at you when you first sort of look at the aircraft, but the more you see about things like that, the more you realise just how much attention has been paid to some of the details. I'll just turn a load of this on just because, well, we can. We'll turn the APU on as well. Yeah, I know about fuel config because we've got virtually no fuel. Where's my status page? Yeah, APU's coming up, look. So I'll have APU power. Respect, there's a lot of systems operation, not just in terms of like the internal systems, but also in terms of the actual practice of operating the aircraft. So now we can get rid of the GPU, close that, and you can see what I mean, that this is such a quick mechanism for getting in and out. It really does appeal to me. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to turn some of these lights on in a minute. What we'll do is turn the dome light on before we do this, and we'll have a look at the lighting and the shadows. Are we going to get any shadows? Yeah, here we go. Now, I don't know about you, but I think the shadows are really quite good. Ignore the jaggies, because the jaggies are more likely down to my settings, my video settings. However, I like the lighting and the shadows. If there's one reason to buy X-Plane 10, for me, it's the night lighting. The night lighting is stunning in this sim. Look at that. Look at it. That is absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. And flying at night in this sim is delightful. It really is delightful. Can't recommend it highly enough. And look, you've even got directional lighting, so that up here you can't see the middle lights. Impressive. Very impressive indeed. There we are. So, yep. Let's just pop back into the cockpit again. Now, something we haven't mentioned much of, but is now patently apparent, is the reflections in the cockpit. Now, if we go back to our little friend down here, one of the things you'll find is if you go, let's turn the volume up again and see if it's still doing the announcement. No, it's not. If you go back up into here, airplane, wing flex, reflections and effects. So you can turn down the reflections. You can see it's gone on the instruments, it's gone on the wind screen. You can turn it all the way up and it looks just flipping ridiculous. But a nice middle setting seems to work about right. You can change the effects in terms of the cockpit effects, but as it says here, if you notice down in the bottom here, when I hover over it, it will affect the FPS. So it should be quite pertinent that when they say that it will have some marked effect. In fact, I might actually turn that down a bit because that's a little bit glary. In fact, you know what? It'll be down to my dome light. So let's turn the dome light down a bit. There we go, that's a little bit better. Now, lighting as a whole in the cockpit, we've only got the dome lights up at the minute, so let's turn the floodlights. You can turn up the general floodlights. You do have the map light up there, look. So you can turn the map light on and down, which is something I haven't looked at really. Let's turn the map light up. Interesting, you can have the charts without the yoke. How bizarre. I wonder. Oh, that's terribly spooky. It's a bit Harry Potter, that, isn't it, really? Yeah. So the map light actually lights the map, which is a nice feature. Although when you turn it out, you can still see the map. Very bizarre. But let's turn that down. Not a fan of those. Not a fan of that either. So there we go. Back to where we were. Now, in terms of lighting, there's one of the things I remember reading an article from a Boeing 757 pilot who highlighted just how many switches, dials and knobs there are in this thing. Panel lights are for the text, if you like, so they're what makes the text brighter and dimmer, and you've got a number of light controls up here as well. So you've got cabin lights in theory, dome light which we've got on, but we'll turn that off for the minute. And then we've got other light switches over here, so you can change the panel and the glare shield lighting. If I can just get to it, there we go. So you can have a nice subdued atmospheric panel like that. You can also change various other settings here in terms of the LED digits. And then that's changing the actual instrument intensities. You can see down here. I'll just move the camera slightly. That's that one, and then that's that one. So really nice all told. Very, very atmospheric. The night lighting effects in here are very, very good. Very big fan of the way this all looks and all appears. What we will do now is we'll get back into the daytime. Don't want that now. Don't want that. Don't want that. Don't want these. And let's turn all these off, get rid of all the lights. So overall really the effect is great, the visual effect is great. We do like that. It has a great atmosphere to the aircraft, makes it feel really good. The next thing really is in terms of sounds. Now, in the background, what we've got is kind of a strange terminal noise. And it's as if we were in the terminal. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that from the cockpit of a jet aircraft you would be able to hear the terminal sounds. Even if the engines aren't running and nothing, you know, no air conditioning, you wouldn't be able to hear it. Reflections. You can see there's nice reflections in terms of the controls, and where the controls are animated you can see that there's some good animations in the reflections. What's more impressive is if I move, you can see the animation and reflections move as well. Sound wise, it's got all the normal sounds for the cockpit. There's nothing exceptional for me, there's nothing that makes me go wow, but there is certainly plenty to sort of try and fill that void that you would get if you didn't have the sounds going. Now, in terms of the rest of the aircraft and the rest of the controls, oh, shut up. Now, this is one of the things that does bug me. This is the purser, and he whinges and whines a lot, so the thing I do to just kill him off is press this loads of times. And I don't know if it's an in-joke or what, but
Captain,
yeah, he's dead now. Great. He's whinging about it being cold. So, let's get some lights back on. There we go. The FMCs, by the way, the CDUs, sorry, have independent adjustable brightnesses, by the way. Look, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much all of the systems there. You can see that we've got nicely animated switches. If I zoom in, you can see that these are nicely animated. You can see that these are not. So the switches don't move, which is a shame. However, in here you do have settings where you can change the FMS from the original non-pip to the pip, etc. So go back to menu, FMC active, index, we'll go to position. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much most of it. As I say, for me personally, I think the cockpit is a really nice environment. The 3D modelling is very nice. For those who are interested in the cabin, there's not a lot in there to see. I think the animation, 3D modelling and texturing overall are very nice. The lighting is particularly good for me. The shadows moving around, the HDR lighting, and I think through all of that, my frame rate has been fairly good throughout. I mean, you can still see here, although we've had a drop of probably about 5 or 6 FPS, it's still perfectly fine. Down and out here now, it's getting down to 30, 32. So although I wouldn't describe it as an FPS hog, It's not hogging the frames per second. It certainly is starting, as you start to fire things up, to have an effect on the aircraft. So what we'll do now is we'll just quickly start the engines and see how we get on with that. So everything's pretty much lined up. What I do need is some bleed air on. We'll turn those on, although it's largely irrelevant. We'll open the isolation valve. We'll get rid of those and make sure those are both off. Everything else is off, so that's not really an issue. We've got the pressure. So what we can do now is we're going to go up here and we're going to turn that one to ground. That should start the engine for running. Make sure that's on status. You can see it is. And at this point, this is one of the things where the switch is it click or is it click and drag. You'll notice this is a 3-position switch here, so you need to make sure it goes all the way up. So 18 to 19% should be enough to get a nice clean start up. Go all the way up and we get a light up. Now you can overtemp the engines in this. If you overtemp the engines, you will have to go into maintenance because they're not very happy with it. This is what I'm saying about persistent failures. Once you've messed something up, you will have to fix it. You've got no choice. The only difference to that is if you exceed the flap limiting speed, the chances are the flaps will come off, and no matter how much maintenance you do, once you've gone nose first into the ground and made a smoking hole, pressing a little maintenance button ain't going to fix it that easily. However, you can see now what's happening is the warnings are changing dependent on the aircraft in terms of it recognising what's going in. On left engine oil pressure is still low, and the engine's nicely stabilised, look. And if we go up here, you can see that most of the warning lights that appertain to the right hand engine are now off, which is all good. Need to put that generator on. We could put the generators on before, it's not a problem, but we didn't have that on there. It's not a massive issue. So what we'll do now is we'll just start the left hand engine, so switch that over to ground, and you can see that all the animations here, it's gone from red to amber to warners, and then it's going up to yellow. N2 is increasing. No fuel flow at the moment, which is quite correct because we haven't put any fuel in. 15, 16, 17, 18, we'll bring it in at 19, there we go. Immediate EGT rise with the fuel flow immediately going in as we change the switch. You can see that we've got 1.56 EPA at the moment set up. That figure is worked out from whatever you put into this system, and EGT is coming back down. Now there's a flickering of the lights, which is exactly what the real system does. If you've got your generator enabled, when you start the engine up, you get that flickering of life, and if you ever watch it on YouTube or TV or whatever, you'll see it does exactly that. And you can see now the warnings are starting to go out as the systems are sorting themselves out. So there we go. Left engine hydraulic pump is fine. Fuel config's going to be having a nightmare for a while, but we can take this off, put those on, turn this up and turn all these on, and that's pretty much the aircraft good to go, to be honest, in terms of a flying condition. Obviously you'd stick some lights on. We can put everything on because we're at the end of the runway, and yeah, parking brakes on, fuel oh, left EECs. The EECs, by the way, these two switches under here, they are basically a form of very early FADEC, electrical engine control, so they're not too dissimilar to a FADEC system. Should have put them on. APU can come off now. All of that looks fine. So I found that there is a bug with this on occasions, that the APU takes a bit of wriggling, shall we say, to get off. But you can see now we've got parking brake, low fuel, and APU. And even though the APU's turned to off, if I go down here and select that one, you can see the APU's still on. So sometimes for me it's just a bit of a fiddle, and eventually what you'll have is that you'll see the APU wind down. That one didn't do it. Did that one do it? I think it's normally the APU bleed that causes it issues. But you can see at the moment it's not turning off. It does eventually if you keep wiggling enough switches. I don't know if it's on a timer or not. I haven't been able to find that out. There we go. Now it's going down. And then that warning will go out. Once the warning's there basically to say, well, your APU's running but your generator's not on. So now you can see it's gone out. Oh, we've turned all our lights down too far, look. Not that one. There we go. Interesting actually to see the differences in colours. Well, you've got red digits over here and white digits over here. But there we go, guys. Well, that's the inside of the cockpit. Quick tour, quick look at it. In terms of considering it as a review, I think there's very little more to say other than I think it's absolutely fantastic. What I'm going to do in the next video is we'll have a little bit of a greater look at the FMC. And we'll have a look at some of the flight dynamics and handling of this thing. But overall, I think the 3D cockpit is absolutely superb. It seems to me to have a very high level of fidelity. Now, I haven't gone through, if you like, the various pressures, etc. in depth. So I can't tell you if the way that the systems work in terms of monitoring pressure is correct. However, what I would say is there's a very long feature list associated with this add-on on the sales page for it. And also just on the developer's web page. It's worth having a look to see just how much is modelled. As I say, I'm not going to go through a massive list of it. Suffice to say, I think it's actually quite well modelled, and I don't think there are many aircraft which are certainly more significant in the terms of the depth of their modelling in X-Plane, and I don't think there are that many aircraft in P3D that are much more detailed than this. I mean, the obvious ones for that are PMDG, and I wouldn't want to draw too many comparisons because of the differences between the sims. But the flip side beyond that is, in addition, I think you know, apart from maybe some of the iFly stuff and the Majestic -8 Q400, I think the fidelity of the systems in this is pretty good, to be honest. So with that in mind, guys, the next video, it might not be out for a week or two, but it's going to be about the flight dynamics and the handling of this thing. And in the meantime, take care.